Okay, awesome. Well, uh, hi, my name's Anang, and I'm with my good friend Noam, and we're just two giant nerds, and we're gonna talk about interesting stuff. And there's no production involved. We're not gonna do a lot of music or drop in graphics. It's just two friends talking about some stuff that we're interested in. So right up front, the first thing we're gonna talk about is the Snyder Cut, since I am a huge Zack Snyder fan. I don't know if Noam is. I just think Zack Snyder provides a great counterpoint to the Marvel universe, which is very, it's dark a little bit, but for the most part, it's a lot of jokes, it's a lot of fun. I think Zack Snyder kind of takes things very, very seriously, and with a little bit of fan service thrown in with references and things like that. But for the most part, I think he provides a more cinematic, or let's say epic version of the DC universe. But no, what do you think? We saw the new trailer come out. Superman in the black suit. We were gonna get Darkseid. The Joker is a meme, but the Joker is also Jared Leto. Jared Leto's getting. I think Is this the only time we've had? This may be the second only time Joker's come back for a second movie. Because there's been no other movies where Joker's returned. It's all been one-offs. Jack Nicholson, um, Heath Ledger, and then Joaquin Phoenix, and now Jared Leto gets a second chance to be a Joker, be the Joker.
That's an interesting point. I hadn't thought of that actually. I have a more complicated opinion of Zack Snyder. I in some ways like I in some ways like I hate him like horribly, but not in the toxic internet way. Like in because we laugh about it a lot. Like I mock his, like, I think he has aspects of like a film school student still, where he adores black and white, for instance. Like all of his teaser shots are in black and white, and a lot of the little 3 second teasers to the teasers that he puts out are kind of in black and white. And he said, like, ideally I would do this in black and white. But there is something that he brings to movies, right? And he has made movies that I like and enjoy, including ones that aren't like widely beloved. And I also I think that like Sucker Punch, which is like a really controversial
Sonny
movie, I
Bunch's
guess.
favorite movie.
Yes, and you can talk about, like, because I've seen like video essays about how that movie is actually like subversively really feminist and empowering the women, but also like making the precise opposite argument. But I'm saying, like, on a pure like visual impact level, I find it really cool. Like, and he was the only one, I think, at that time who had the balls to just do a like throw everything against the wall kind of thing, where they're in schoolgirl outfits fighting a samurai robot in World War II
With
with
the Gatling gun or whatever. Yeah.
yes, exactly. And they're, I don't know, and like the soldiers are like poofing into like puffs of smoke, but like just so over the top, and but done like but like played straight, right? Not played for laughs or whatever, like in like a legitimate war combat scene kind of way. um and also I'm really interested in this movie, right? I joked a lot about how I said something like, oh, we need the Snyder Cut really badly because we need a bad movie to be upgraded to meh,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But there is, you never really get a chance to see a movie get unscrewed like this, right? There's a lot of what ifs in the history of especially geek movies. I'm kind of obsessed with like the things that didn't happen, like the Nicolas Cage Superman, and
Jodorowsky's Dune.
Jodorowsky's Dune. Yeah, exactly. That's a great example.
But in
Or
terms
like
of in
the
terms of
original
movies,
the original vision of Alien 3, like the
right?
Fincher's great. And then the Neil Blomkamp Alien movie that never happened.
Or the
You know,
Halo movie.
yeah, there's all kinds of, and
Yeah.
so, and you have your Josh Trank Fantastic Four type movies. And you never see a movie get a chance to get unfucked in this way, right? Like untangled and like put back together the way it was intended.
that was going to be the thing that I'm also wondering. Like, is this going to be Apocalypse Now Redo, where all the French scenes are put back in, and you're like, you might as well give me the same heroin that he's smoking because this is boring as hell. I need some drugs to get through this. The extended scenes in Apocalypse Now, but then you also have other directors' cuts where people did get the chance to redo. So the possibly this could be somewhere around the Richard Donner Superman 2 cut
Right.
as well.
I believe the problem with that was that they had what they had and they didn't have like reshoots they couldn't use anymore, right? And that
Right.
he had not had everything that he wanted on film. And I don't know if Snyder spoke about things that he wanted and did not get even for this version, or whether or not this is exactly what he wanted, period, the end.
Yeah, very rarely do directors get a chance to really do their version in this way where there's production money being put around it. I mean, a lot of times they go, well, we'll redo the special effects or something, right? So like George Lucas redoing the Jabba the Hutt, or I don't think anybody else has gotten that kind of opportunity. Maybe Blade Runner, the Blu-ray, where Ridley Scott filmed one more scene with the stunt woman because on high def you could tell that it wasn't Zora running for the thing, so they had her come back in and redid some of the scenes with her.
Funny enough, you can like tweak that with like CG
Face
nowadays.
replace, yeah.
Yeah, it's super easy. That is like the least of your troubles.
But rarely does a director get a chance to not only reshoot stuff, redo the effects, add in new characters like the Joker that weren't possibly in the original scripted version, and so he filmed certain versions at the way the studio wanted him to, the notes that he got, and now he gets a chance to throw all the notes away and say, this is what I want. And the studio says, sure, as long as it's a 10 poll for our streaming service, you can do most of what you want. And it's going to be kind of interesting to see what happens there, what the 4 hours is actually going to look like. I mean, is there an interval, or is this just keep going on and on? I mean, how do you?
I feel like it was a perfect storm with COVID too, because I was trying to read about that. Funny enough, because I found an old tweet of mine saying, now I'm sure that it's going to be made. And it was in December. It was like months. And then I was like, when did they announce this? And I went to read about it, and they didn't even make the actual decision until February. And what I was talking about at the time was, it was when like Ben Affleck and stuff, like he tweeted like release the Snyder Cut. And I was like, okay, if Ben Affleck's doing that, it's definitely happening. Thinking like it was already decided, but apparently, like, I guess it was like just the final push. But it was this perfect storm of it. I was talking about that, about this Spider-Man 3 project that they're talking about now, and also news that they're bringing Chris Evans back to make 2 more movies as Captain America. COVID is going to open the door to these kinds of projects, like the most. Imagine if this happened. We're going to talk about WandaVision later, which had exactly something like that. Something that like you wouldn't have expected, in a pre-COVID era to be anything more than just like a jokey like reference, but now could actually mean something big for like the future of the MCU in general. And so yeah, like I think he got lucky in a way where, with COVID and with this the streaming thing like heating up and them needing this exact kind of project, because 4 hours if this was going to be strictly we're putting this in the theaters, right, we're remaking this and we're putting this in the theaters, they would not let him do a 4-hour cut. What are you, crazy?
Right.
I mean, I don't know. They're probably going to run it in cinemas now, but again, they can do that because of COVID. You can't do a long hour. They're even doing it with like a 10-minute intermission because they're 4-hour movies. And so that means with like trailers and stuff, you're talking about like a 5-hour theater turnaround time, which normally gets you 2 screenings of a movie that's like slightly under, like if it's 2 hours, that's easily, you get 2 screenings in 5 hours. If you turn it around like quickly, 5 and 10 minutes, maybe.
Yeah, that's kind of I mean, so people have made this comparison that because when Spanish flu hit and the economic depression happened, people, that's when sound came back and came not back, but sound came into movies because a lot of theaters folded, and then the movie industry decided that they needed new technology to bring people in, and so sound happened. And then even at the end of the studio system in the 50s and 60s, you can kind of see this kind of there's a movie called where How the West Was Won, which was displayed on this giant cinemarama, 3 screens together, and you had John Wayne and Jimmy, not Jimmy Stewart, the bad guy from Henry Fonda. Henry
Mhm.
Fonda together, people are like, oh my God, they're just in one scene. It's not even, it's a star
Uh,
filled, movie about how
wow.
the West was won.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah,
See, I did not know that. And so in a way, wow. So in a way, like, yeah, blockbusters, they also realized that they needed like big blockbuster type projects.
because TV was taking away their money, and they go, we need giant stars to come in and just
That's
do one scene.
See, that's amazing. See, I didn't think of that because like that, yeah, that used to be a thing where like you could like the egos were so big that you couldn't get two of like the big names of the day, in the same movie. They would have they would have the same dynamic that from the island of Dr. Moreau,
Yeah,
because they had that like Val Kilmer and
Marlon Brando.
Brando had this like weird ego war.
Yeah, I
That
mean, yeah,
there's an amazing documentary about that, by the way, about
yeah,
that movie.
there's so many examples of movies where stars are like, if I'm not the main person, I'm not in it. And then it sort of got to a weird point where movie theaters and studios were like, we're in trouble. You all, everybody in Hollywood needs to step up. And they tried to do these giant, epics, and it kind of worked for a little bit. And then it sort of went away. And then you got Star Wars, and people go, okay, this is now the birth of the modern blockbuster. This is like even bigger than it used to be. But yeah, we're kind of but back to the Snyder Cut stuff. So Jared Leto, not even coming back, he's being added in,
Yeah.
and it's unclear
Like
whether
a nightmare version of the Joker.
yeah, it's unclear whether Snyder wanted him there in the first place or whether this was an addition after the fact when the studio said you can have whoever you want. And then he goes, well, I did want Joker, maybe. And then there's people pointing out that in the earlier version of the Snyder Cut, in the Knightmare sequence in Batman v Superman, you can see that Batman has a Joker card taped to his gun, which was an indication that maybe that was Joker's gun that he took. But a lot of that sort of backstory being filled in, kind of stuff.
So I don't know if because you have a tendency, unlike me, like you enjoy like reading like plot spoilers about things like this and whatever. Like that's your thing, and I don't. I mean, sometimes I do. It depends on how little I give a
If it
crap.
gets
I mean,
stupid, then I don't care either. Yeah. If it's
yeah,
like,
I know, but I mean, whatever. Like you, even things you like you enjoy. And I mean, I think I used to that used to be more of my thing, and now in a way, I'd rather not just for the heck of it because it's not because like who cares, right? I
yeah,
mean,
there's a
especially
there's a great example of like Star Wars Facts channel pointing out that Palpatine raised like thousands of Sith on that Sith planet,
mhm,
and Frodo Elijah Wood was like, how could we have known this? Like, why are you telling us this now? It was a
yeah,
great example of like this had no bearing on the movie because
right.
nobody cared. It's
No,
just like
exactly.
random facts being thrown
But
around.
but so like my I have a weird theory about the way this movie might be constructed, and like I said, I don't know if you read like is there out there like is there like a plot? Like, do people know what it's gonna be like?
I mean, it's
Like,
it's
is
pretty
that
much
info out there?
it's the what I've heard so far, and this is very broad based strokes, but it's basically the
I
Justice.
don't tell anybody. Because I had a theory about what it might be like and whether or not there was a chance that like it could actually like that the nightmare sequence was not going to be just a dream sequence, but was somehow going to be like actually the actual future, like and then have that involve somehow like going back in time to warn yourself about a thing like happened in the thing with the Flash. You
Yeah,
said
there's a lot of
he went back
speculation
too
about the
early.
Flash. There's a lot. It's basically Justice League with the Joss Whedon Justice League broad based plot with Darkseid added in, and then some other speculation as to what could have happened, because he has more time to play around with it. So maybe you get a longer epilogue, as they
Yeah.
say.
And Martian Manhunter. Here's the thing, by the way, you want to hear this is because, like I said, in some ways I hate Zack Snyder terribly. I'll explain the ways in which this is a great example of why I hate him. Whatever. They asked him, the inevitable question, which was also asked of like the Feige crew. Where was Martian Manhunter during, Man of Steel and whatever? And Zack Snyder like hand waved it by saying something like, "Oh, I don't think." He didn't think there was a big enough threat to whatever. And it was like, oh, come on, man. Like millions of people died in Metropolis or whatever. And the same thing happened with Batman v Superman, where they were like, Batman kills people. Why does Batman kill people? And he was like, well, he doesn't kill them directly. He shoots the car they're in and it explodes and they die. That's not exactly him killing them. And it was this dude, just like embrace it. Just say like, I decided that this world is gritty enough so that Batman kills people in it. And that I think that also contributes to the conflict between him and Superman. I felt like that was a good plot. And yes, I understand that is not classic canonical Batman, but like I felt like it made my story stronger. Like, why can't a director just say that?
I mean,
like, I would respect that so much, because there's Batmans that kill.
Yeah,
there was a whole era of the comics where like it wasn't Bruce Wayne anymore; it was some other guy, and he was like a psycho who killed people. Like, why not? It's fine for your Batman. It's fine.
I think at this point we've matured enough from comic books and the old vision of I don't kill, that I think at this point nobody really cares. I mean, honestly, if you got bashed in with the Captain America's flying shield, pretty sure you're gonna take some damage that's gonna cause internal injuries and things like that. So it's one of those things where you kind of don't want them to kill, but you kind of do. So yeah, I get the waffling. I get the waffling part where he's kind of not being completely clear. The other thing I was wondering about with the Snyder Cut was, and again, this is more like, is this the beginning of something new in terms of the DC verse, or if it becomes successful and if it gets enough subscribers? I'm sure they had something like that in mind. But I also wonder, because Snyder has, you do have to give it to him for choosing Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, and he has shepherded a few of these guys through. He selected Aquaman, Jason Momoa, and then Jason Momoa got $1 billion movie out of that. So it feels like he's somewhere straddling the sphere between being a Christopher Nolan who does weird artistic stuff, and then also shepherding projects through, shepherding actors through, and sort of being like this Kevin Feige. And maybe this is like him, if it's successful enough, he gets more movies, and if it's not successful enough, he's at least set his mark on the DC universe so that other people can now come in and do stuff. But you do also have Shazam to look forward to. A lot of
interesting. It's true, and yeah, like when I was saying that there was a perfect storm to bring this about, one of the definite elements of it is, like the passion of the fan base, and like regardless of the fact that the internet writer sphere thinks that the fan base is terrible. And yes, there is a lot of toxicity. The problem is that there's a lot of toxicity about everything. Like if you think about every topic that's discussed online as like a big bowl, like you mix a bowl with stuff in it, right? At some point, like the dregs are going to sink to the bottom. Like that happens in the debate about everything. And yeah, that's like, it tends to get amplified because it's disgusting. And like, the point is like, the reason toxic debate gets amplified, like on places like Twitter, is, for instance, like, you never want to point out a mild, polite tweet. You want to point out a tweet that's like disgusting and say like, wow, look how awful this person is. You never want to like quote tweet a tweet to your like million followers and say like, wow, look at this, disagreement that's very middle of the road and unimpressive in any way. Like it's a what is it called? Survivorship bias.
Yeah,
right?
you wouldn't have
the picture of the plane with the red holes in it.
Yeah, you wouldn't have anything else to write about. I mean, the internet writers, especially the reviewers, are, and that's also, I feel like Zack Snyder just takes a lot of heat because of 300, and people have just decided that his movies are, whatever. They've politicized his work to some extent where it's completely stupid, and he has no. I've never gotten any whiffs of politics from his work or his sayings, and it's like, that's not what I'm there for. I'm there to be a fan and
cute. He's always cute. Like I said, the thing that annoyed me about his talking about like Batman killing and Martian Manhunters, when he does it, also he's he's kind of bashful and he kind of chuckles and stuff. Like he's not being obnoxious. Like
Yeah.
he's actually like he seems like a really sweet dude.
I mean, I
Like
think
I don't
that's
know. There's never been any, and like they all like him, right?
yeah, like all the yeah,
Not Ray
Fisher.
Park.
Very
Yes,
part of
Ray Park is the other guy.
Yeah.
They all had problems with Whedon, not with
Yeah.
Zack Snyder.
He's definitely one of those what would you call it, like actors, directors. I mean, again, it's that thing of he picked, he picked Cavill, Gal Gadot. I mean, just great people who got chances to shine more than they may not have otherwise. I mean, it doesn't feel again, it's one of those things. I mean, Henry Cavill probably would have been huge in other ways, but it's just one of those things where the love that they have for Zack Snyder just says something about, and especially the Zack Snyder, the Snyder Cut fans. I mean, he does these live streams on Vero and his social network, and people just seem to have some level of
there seems to be very little problem. Yeah, like in terms of like who he casts. The one exception to that is Eisenberg, but that was more because they didn't like the direction that he took Lex Luthor. But like other than that, you're right. Because like think about other superhero movies that a lot of people didn't like. Okay, like the X-Men, like the latter X-Men franchise movies. Because like nobody like Famke Jensen. Well, I mean, she's not really like popular anymore. That's the thing. Like he has a good eye for actors who like are either on their way up or he kind of made that, he kind of launched their careers. Like I said, a lot of what he does I think is great. It's almost like I wish he had like a babysitter, you
yeah,
know. I say that about Michael Bay as well. Michael Bay needs more of a babysitter than Zack Snyder, but like he's also like a really solid director. He knows how to shoot stuff and he knows how to combine CG but he makes a lot of really poor like creative choices like on the level of story and
yeah. I
stuff
mean,
like that.
BVS, when we first saw it in the theaters, I mean, the first thing I said was it needs better editing, especially the Martha scene. That's exactly where he went back and re-edited it to make it clearer what was going on in Bruce's head, despite whatever cringe that there is centered around the Martha language and the meme that it's become. I feel like what it needed was the editing that it got in the ultimate cut, where it's much more clear that Batman is obsessed with the last moments of his parents' death, as he is in the comics, but that is the word that caused him to take a break and take a pause and realize that the man in front of him is a man and not a vicious killer or whatever it is.
Yeah, because like I'm on the side of like, like making fun of that. Like I'm on that side of it. But even I understand that it was not literally the name. It was like the idea that showed him like, oh, we're both, you know what? Like other movies did exactly the same thing, like The Kingdom or Munich,
Yeah,
all had that same idea of like this person has a family too. The terrorist also has a little girl, and much like in The Kingdom specifically, there's a scene that parallels both sides where what's her name, the one who played Elektra, because this is also connected to Ben Affleck because they were together in Daredevil.
oh
What's her
yeah,
name?
yeah. Jennifer Jason Leigh. No,
No.
is it okay, yeah, are you talking about The Kingdom, the 2007 movie The Kingdom
Yes, with Jamie
with Jamie
Foxx
Foxx?
and
Wow,
what's
I'm
her
so
name?
blanking on her name.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know, right? Anyway, their friend, they're in the FBI, and their friend dies in a suicide bombing in like an American oil facility in Saudi Arabia, and they go to like investigate it.
Yeah.
And like she says to him, like she has a scene where like she whispers to him something like make them all pay, or something like that. And then later in the movie, like that exact same scene happens to like the bomb maker that they're ultimately hunting.
Yeah.
His like wife says that, whispers, leans in and whispers that exact same thing to him, like in Arabic or whatever. So like there is that there. And so yeah, it became a meme. And also because people, there was a very extreme reaction to that movie. And again, you know what? To his credit, in a way, like his movies are never, and nobody shrugs at a Zack Snyder movie really. Like
Yeah.
people have very visceral reactions to it, which is fine.
I mean, I
Uh,
just think I think there's two problems there. One is the fact that we've movies in general. I mean, even movies that are not Marvel movies have become Marvelized, and you see this on Netflix. You see this on any of these sort of movies that aren't Downton Abbey or whatever, that are fictionalized to some extent. They cannot take themselves seriously, and so again, this may be a polarizing point, but Zack Snyder takes his work seriously, and the work that he creates, he may have fun with it. You see the behind the scenes footage; they're having fun with it. It's not a depressing creation of a movie, but the content is very straightforward. It's, when Superman is hanging in the sky like Dr. Manhattan, you really feel that he, is feeling some level of not ennui, but just he's feeling some level of separation from humanity after saving so many people over and over and over again. And you're kind of wondering like where this is going. And it's not, there's some great scenes in Batman v Superman and a little bit in Justice League too, where that have that concept of and I think maybe in Justice League we were heading towards a more positive, less cynical. We needed the darkness of Batman v Superman, and maybe the Zack Snyder version of Justice League, even though it is a lot less Whedon-esque, is going to be more positive in that sense, that the Age of Heroes returns, and and this is kind of what we needed. I mean, this is one of the things that people maybe are looking forward to in the Snyder Cut, which is that you're going to have a little bit of that banter between Superman and Batman. Maybe hopefully they may go back in there and fix that. Maybe we need some of those fun scenes where where Batman's like, I got plans to kill all of y'all, just in case you go rogue. And Superman's like, really? Didn't I just get away from this? What the,
and so wait, are they going to not? So I heard that Cavill was not back for any reshoots. And so are they going to have none of the mustache scenes, or did they?
I mean, I don't think they're going to do any mustache scenes.
Or
I doubt it.
Maybe they redid it. Maybe they redid them and did it well.
My guess is they're keeping that secret, and he might come back with a beard or something. But like, I don't think they're going to do them. Yeah,
interesting.
I think if Zack Snyder's gotten this chance to redo his work, he's like, the first thing that's going away are the mustache scenes. No more Soup's mustache. So
yeah.
I hope that's the one thing that they fix, because that was just, I mean, that's literally the opening scene of the movie. You're like, oh no, this is gonna be bad.
And like I even heard like someone had a really funny idea of how to have done that scene, like, because like imagine you see it right, like in final approval, because I'm sure they have a thing like that, right? When it gets through rendering and it gets through like the cut, and then you sit down with the special effects director, maybe even Snyder, probably Snyder himself. They sit down and they run through the special effects cuts. Like, does this look good? Do you think something needs tweaking or whatever? And so at some point it went to like final approval and got final approval, right? But I think they could have done, someone suggested a really good like emergency edit to it, which is just make him frame it poorly. Like the kid made an accident and is like he's catching it like neck down. So you can't even see. And like occasionally it could like flip up so that you see the face like in blur. I don't know, whatever.
Two frames where it can really not look like it's and it's a shitty cell phone or whatever.
Yeah, or someone said like Tarkin should have only appeared like
in reflection.
Either in reflection and in like hologram, like speaking to a hologram, like never like full in the face like that. Just because it just looked a little not good enough.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where with Tarkin you could have recast him. With Cavill, I mean, the other thing you could have done was just given him a fake beard. It's like, all right, the mustache can't come off, give him a beard. But then you wouldn't have the cell phone scene. You would only have had, I mean, it's a lot more to be done there. But I hope they've definitely, I'm guessing they've definitely fixed that. But let's
also that scene. The other, we're gonna move on, right? Yeah, but also the other scene that is very apparent that he has a mustache on is the scene in the cornfield in Smallville, which is also like looks terribly like green screen. Like the lighting is bad. It's like it's scenes also that look yeah, like it looks just kind of amateurish, like somebody's first like serious attempt with like a
I
After
mean,
Effects or something like that for
yeah,
color
Joss
correction.
Whedon, the Avengers worked really well for him, but that the first Avengers, I would say. But Joss Whedon has always had that TV. He films in a TV aspect ratio. He's always had that TV look to his work, and it is what it is. Joss
Yeah.
Whedon's troubles
He's also
aside.
he's also a terrible, terrible person,
Yeah,
apparently.
well, yeah, it's that again goes to like what it speaks to Zack Snyder's, character as a director, that everybody around him loves him, and the fans love him, and then the actors always come out in support of him. I mean, and again, whatever you think of his talent as a director, I think it says something to the way that he treats people around him. And I think that's at least laudable in terms of like who he is as a director. And hopefully we get to see more cool things from him. Day of the Dead, or is it Day of the Dead or Land of the Dead that he's directing also for Netflix?
It's I don't know. No, isn't it? Is that what he's doing?
Yeah,
I
it's a,
did
he's
not know. He
it's like greenlit. It may not have started filming because he's working on the Snyder Cut, but he's doing a sequel to his zombie movie, Dawn of the Dead, the 2004 fast zombie
Yeah, yeah.
movie.
Oh, so it is probably Day of the Dead, I believe
Yeah,
is the second one in that series. It's the one in the bunker, right?
yeah, yeah. Cool. Well, let's move on to
Yes. The other
WandaVision.
universe, the other
Yeah,
universe.
the other universe, the MCU.
Jump universes.
WandaVision.
Ironically, by the way, because this show also appears to potentially jump universes or whatever. It's by the way, this is good to get into right now because you were saying about like things getting marvelized and whatnot, and I actually thought this was an interesting, like it felt kind of fresh. Thinking about that, like the idea of like things being marvelized, it does feel like it's taken some chances on weirdness. It also did to me something very ballsy, which was it gave itself like 3 full episodes to do almost nothing aside from like set itself up as a weird thing and just give you little hints that like, yes, stick with us. Like there's a famous, this is going to be the weirdest analogy ever, but there is like a really popular anime. We're not going to get into it, but like it has an infamous story arc that essentially has the same episode repeat 8 times. And
Oh
by
Lord.
yeah, and by the same episode repeat 8 times is I mean the animation studio animated the exact same episode 8 times, but like not down to the camera shot. It's different camera angles each time. The script is identical. It's about a time loop, which connects to another topic that we might discuss today. But like this, for the first episodes, felt a little like in the vibe of that. I even said on Twitter, I compared the two, but like, it switches the style of sitcom or whatever. But yeah, like it's letting itself be really weird and out there and kind of free form, and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, do we want to spoil it for the people, or do you think we should keep it spoiler
I
free?
mean, we could always like do a time code. So like now we're gonna be at
Yeah,
minute
spoiler warning,
33.
5
Yeah.
seconds in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah, we're entering minute 33 or whatever, and yeah,
Yeah.
like, I, can we flash a logo to say
Oh,
like
we
when
can just we
spoilers
can just say
ends?
spoilers here, and we'll make it clear.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. Okay, so yeah,
Yeah.
like until the Chiron switches to something
Yeah.
else, you can say we're gonna
We're
be
gonna be
discussing
yeah, we're gonna be
spoilers.
talking spoilers, and I'll,
I
I'll
like
put it
that.
in the time code as well
Yeah.
in the
Okay.
description.
There you
But
go.
but yeah, like the whole edition of is
Yeah,
Quicksilver,
Evan Peters.
Evan
That was the
Peters.
moment. Yeah, the big moment that you go watch reaction videos for when because I have a love-hate relationship with reaction videos. I hate them dearly, except in very specific situations like this one. Because it was like the Mandalorian's reveal of Luke Skywalker. Uh, if I have if I like yell like what the fuck at the screen, I'm like, okay, I want to go watch and see how other people react to this moment because like I had a weird reaction to it.
Yeah.
Um and yeah, like the idea that because like I was saying about COVID and about the potential of like all these weird projects that would never have seemed worth it. Uh but will now like be used maybe to restart like the movie going economy. Yeah, the idea of like a crossover now between the X-Men universe and the MCU, which now are both owned by Disney. It's by the way, it's been said, because it's already been said, that the next Deadpool movie takes place in the MCU, and he's had crossover with that X-Men universe already in Deadpool 2. There's specifically a scene where he opens a door and it's that cast of the X-Men. Evan Peters is there and
Right.
James McAvoy, and they're all like sitting in a room just like staring at him. And yeah, like Quicksilver has like a Nirvana shirt on. But that's just like a meta joke, but also not. Like he also in the first Deadpool like references McAvoy or Stewart as a joke. And so yeah, like the idea that and yeah, like I said, this Spider-Man 3 project that they're making, this like live action Spider-Verse, I guess.
I mean, that's going to be more on the Sony end. So this is an interesting thing. So we've had Spider-Verse from Sony, which is an animated movie. Now Sony is giving or working with Disney to create this Spider-Verse thing. Or no, well, I mean, Tom Holland's going to be in it, but technically this might be more of a Sony initiative to be like, let's just make Spider-Verse movies that happen to have Tom Holland in them. So then it's more heavier on Sony's side.
Do you think it's that, or do you think it is a series of like lesser sort of cameo type things, like our Spider-Man, like traveling into the Amazing Spider-Man universe and meeting Andrew Garfield, and then going into the Raimi verse and meeting
nobody knows the actual plot. My guess would be Sony has found their groove with Spider-Verse, and I think they do not want to give up the Spider-Man copyright, and they want to make as much money from it as possible, because they realize that if they don't, then Marvel, basically steals this forever. And I think they are desirous of.
They should just keep working together. Like I think we said this because there was at some point there was like a fear. The deal almost fell apart, right?
Yeah.
After Far From Home.
Yeah.
There was a moment where it seemed like the deal was done.
It was guaranteed to fall apart because Sony just does not want to give any Spider-Man money to Disney.
Right. But then it didn't. And I at the time, what we were saying about that is like there's infinite money out there. Like it's not, you're gonna if you work together, and this is a really great example of that, because I do think that they can complement each other. And by the way, I'm making a prediction here about this movie.
Okay.
So if it really is this, what I thought, which is like Spider-Man jumping between universes, it is going to have a Spider-Verse like animated part in it.
Oh yeah, with Miles Morales.
He enters the Spider-Verse universe in that half Tony animated fashion, and potentially meets all of the other Nicolas Cage or whatever. But even if not, he's gonna be animated for one segment of it. I'm sure of that.
Yeah, I think that would be. Yeah, like I mean, that's kind of what Spider-Verse really showed Sony, that this was possible, because you had the Nicolas Cage black and white Spider-Man, you had the anime Spider-Man, you had the pig Spider-Man kind of thing. So it would behoove them to then have the Spider-Man 3 movie where all three Spider-Men are there, and all of a sudden Miles Morales comes in and it turns into an animated Spider-Verse, thing, and everybody just goes nuts because now there's a fourth Spider-Man. It's the same reveal from the Spider-Verse where they're in the forest and all of a sudden Gwen Stacy just jumps in, and it's like, wait a second, I thought we got all the intros already. And
I wonder if they'll use this movie to introduce their Miles Morales, which they might do.
I think, and again, this is all speculation, I don't know the inside track, but my belief is that Sony is insanely jealous of the success that Marvel has seen. They have tasted that success with some of the Venom movie did okay. The Spider-Verse movie did great. They got Oscars out of it, and they have never wanted to relinquish the Spider-Man property. And I think that's why I was sure after Far From Home that they were going to immediately cancel that deal, because they were just not going to be able to come to an agreement. And I think when they saw the outrage that the fans had that, Tom Holland wasn't going to return, they were like, okay, we'll give you a couple more. And I think this is going to be the arc for even the further Spider-Man movies or any properties that Sony owns, where they're going to keep playing that, that sort of Cold War game of like, one-upmanship where, hey, we got Miles Morales. We're introducing Morpheus. We're introducing, all these Spider-Man universe characters. I mean, who knows? We might get a Black Cat movie. We might get, who are the other characters? I don't even know. Spider-Woman, there's a lot that Sony could do with the Spider-Verse that they
might,
own.
yeah. I mean, they might end this movie, this third movie, with Tom Holland Spider-Man like leaving our universe.
Yeah.
Like, like they could introduce a reason for him to like maybe he maybe like Sliders, maybe he finds like a universe that's like adjacent to ours in which Peter Parker is the one who died and his parents and like Uncle Ben are all still alive or something like that.
Yeah.
And then maybe Aunt May die, maybe our Aunt May dies. And so then like he goes to that universe where he can be like happy with his family who are like that's what's going to happen.
Put a nice ribbon on Tom Holland walking out successfully of this series.
Yeah. Give him like a Captain America type send off where like, where he gets to have his family back. They get to have like a Peter who died back.
And then they have their Peter, Miles Morales. I mean, and that's going to be, look, honestly, I don't put it beyond any of them, but that could be that's a great thing for the internet writers to write about, when is Tom Holland going to be,
or maybe he takes Aunt May with him. Like maybe, so maybe her, cause there wasn't Uncle Ben in this universe. They never mention him, but his initials are on the briefcase. So like maybe that's it. Maybe his parents are alive and her husband is alive in this like alternate universe, and they are the ones who died like in a car crash or something like that. And so it's like, oh, perfect ending, right?
I mean, that's where who's the Thomas Wayne universe thing, right? So there's a lot you can do with it, but honestly, if you were going to go that way, open up Spider-Man 3 with Uncle Ben and Tom Holland, and you see like this is the younger version of Tom Holland, and you see like you see like a glimpse of the origin story, and then you cut to the funeral, and then that sets up the rest of the movie. The Spider-Verse happens, and then Tom Holland chances into he like turns around and bumps into this universe where Uncle Ben's still alive, and he's like, Uncle Ben, oh my God. And he's like, who are you?
I do it differently. Here's how I would do it. I would start it off like the origin story, right?
Yeah.
And do everything the same. And then at the moment that Uncle Ben is supposed to get shot, Peter gets shot and dies.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Thomas Wayne. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So and then so Peter dies.
Yeah.
And then it just cuts, and you don't, and you like, and then right. And then later with like the universes open up, like that's the universe that you see. I love that idea. I think that's great. I think that's amazing. That would be amazing.
Because then it's like you allow Tom Holland and you allow the younger Peter Parker to have the life that he never dreamt of, and everybody on his universe is dead. And then again, you could play around with Tony Stark in there too, because you have multiple universes. Tony Stark could be, you could get the X-Men Deadpool thing where all of a sudden he jumps into Stark Tower and Tony's like, who are you supposed to be? And then he just goes away.
We're eventually just going to get an Avengers versus Justice League.
I mean, it's going to get crazy for sure. It's going to get crazy. Like there's no way around it. But yeah, the other thing
But then what? Like we're reaching entertainment singularity. It's gonna like
this is 90s comic book singularity.
Yeah, like reboot Star Wars.
Superman fighting off like nuclear missiles or whatever. Like we're like okay, like
reboot everything.
Yeah,
they're Marvel zombies. They'll do a Marvel universe where all of the genders are swapped.
All of that. The other thing I was wondering about in WandaVision, and again, we don't have to like do oh
my God, we got so sidetracked.
We got super sidetracked, but like that's fine. We can just like we'll do a ton of time codes. But in terms of WandaVision, one of the things I'm wondering is, because this is a Disney property, and we already saw Luke Skywalker show up in Mandalorian. Do we expect any other MCU characters to show up at the season finale that's set up? Possibly, like I said, Spider-Verse. We have the immediate movie that's coming out, and this I'm not the first one to say this, but the immediate movie that's coming out is Doctor Strange 2.
Yeah, Doctors and she's confirmed to be in it. Elizabeth
Yeah.
Olsen, like the Scarlet Witch, is confirmed to be in that movie. I think Cumberbatch is definitely going to be in this.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay.
Also, here's another interesting thing about WandaVision. It might have a secret episode.
Mm.
So it's okay. So it's slated for 9 episodes, and then there's a weird like week off, and then Falcon and Winter Soldier start. And so there's
Huh.
this weird theory that maybe it has 10 episodes, and one of them is just like not announced because that kind of sounds like something this show would do, right?
Why not?
Um, and so I believe like this week is episode 7, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so we'll see. But yeah, like I said, I'm really enjoying it. I enjoy like kind of meta-y stuff, and this is to me this is a really fun way to do like that kind of fans, like pure unadulterated fan service, is to just like kind of own it. But yeah, it's grim. Like I love the commercials that they do. They're so grim, especially the last two have been particularly grim. The one was the Lagos paper towels, which was hilarious. Like the tagline of it was like, "When you make a mistake, when you make a mess, you didn't mean to," or something like that. And it's just like, oh, because she killed all those Wakandans.
Yeah.
And then this week with the boy, the claymation boy who like turns into ages quickly and turns into a skeleton, kind of like in Indiana Jones, right? Like there's like this accelerated shot of him like dying and becoming like a desiccated body. That's so dark, man.
It's the other thing I was so with Quicksilver being in WandaVision, that was the thing that the deal probably wasn't finalized at the time, but I was kind of hoping they would do a post Avengers epilogue where Captain America or the remaining characters turn around at Tony's funeral, and it's a Professor X wheeling himself in, McAvoy being like, here we go,
And
you
so
just
there again, lots of theories about because Monica Rambeau in the show has been said to like have her like essentially like DNA altered by entering and leaving this like barrier, and
mm,
that maybe that is some kind of like genesis of mute. Maybe that'll probably give her powers, but probably not in like the mutants way. Because the problem with how you introduce mutants into this world is like some of them have like canonical historical backstories. Like you can't, unless you just want to retcon who Magneto is entirely.
yeah,
He
or
has to
you
have had his powers back in like the Holocaust.
right,
Although
or you
also,
just
by the
start a
way,
new you start a new universe like we're getting with Evan Peters, and then you sort of say that because this universe is now merging with ours or whatever is happening, that it is. I mean, that was a thing with Age of Ultron where Wanda and Pieter are supposed to be Magneto's kids,
right?
and they're supposed to be mutants, but because Fox had the copyright on X-Men, they couldn't
Yeah.
use the word
They
mutant.
called enhanced and
Yeah,
whatever, right.
enhanced or whatever. So
They already
now
got into that
you have to
problem.
reconcile both things, and I think WandaVision might be a way to do it.
You're also starting to run into some trouble because when you tie in a character's backstory to like real history, the more you drift away from that historical event, the harder it gets to like tie in that, because like you're gonna cast Magneto as a 90-year-old man. Like that's how like at
Yeah,
what point is Auschwitz like so far in the past that like he couldn't have been a kid in Auschwitz and be still, because you would ideally you would want to cast somebody young to be a Magneto, because you can use them for however many more movies. And so that that is a problem unless your Magneto is somebody that you bring not only from another universe but like from the past of another universe. So like
yeah,
our Magneto is going to be someone that we plucked from the 60s of like another dimension where there's mutants into our dimension. So
yeah.
yeah, there
Because technically, the McAvoy Professor X is from the '70s and '60s, so it's like, how do you? Yeah, it's gonna be weird for sure.
even their universe makes no sense because Magneto doesn't age between like 1965 and 1995 essentially. You
Yeah,
know,
well,
it's
yeah,
it's like, right, he's still like a youngish looking guy.
Yeah,
I mean, their
just a
timeline is
couple of digitally enhanced
yeah,
wrinkles. Yeah,
right.
just like
Their
okay.
timeline is totally broken. You know what? I'm very, very fine with them uh uh only using the X-Men, like the X-Men will be in an adjacent universe,
Yeah,
right?
or who owns Fantastic Four? That's Fox too, right? I
So
think.
that's so here you go.
Ah,
Prevailing theory about what we're going to see this week on WandaVision is Reed Richards,
ooh, all right.
because she says, "Oh, there's an my aerospace engineer friend is going to meet us,"
Mm.
and that is everybody's saying that that's got to be Reed Richards.
Yeah, I mean it's easier because there's no Fantastic Four has been such a giant mess that it's easier to introduce the Fantastic Four into MCU, integrate into the MCU, than have the previously established X-Men enter the MCU, and then you go, well, where were they this entire time, and that whole thing. But that's going to be kind of interesting as well. But to pivot to another Disney property, let us talk about. Uh, we're not going to talk about the politics side of it. It is what it is. You know, uh,
Do people know this reference?
yeah, Gina Carano, Gina Carano's off of Mandalorian, has been fired from Disney and will not be rehired according to the statement by Disney.
Yes.
And the joke,
Sell all your crypto and invest in Cara Dune figurines.
yeah, buy all your Cara Dune Legos if you can,
Yes,
before they
yes.
become crazy
Cara
expensive.
Dune coin.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the joke at the bottom of the screen being a Simpsons joke from Itchy and Scratchy. Hey, Cara Dune, do you have something to say? Indeed, I do. I have to go now, and yeah, which is kind of what they're gonna have to do. But what's
Yeah.
funnier? What's
Kinda
funnier
what the
is
Snyder it's kinda what Justice League looked like originally.
yeah. It's what's funnier is Cara Dune doesn't have a home planet, right? That's the whole that's the
Oh,
other
that's
dark joke of it.
hilarious. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, that's
he has
kinda
nowhere
like
to go.
yeah, that's kinda like Alf, like, that's how Alf ended, I believe. It was like he died on his way back to Melmac and never saw his or yeah, like, Quantum Leap also ended like that,
Yeah,
where
didn't
he
Quantum Leap have
never
like a really shitty ending?
it just
Yeah.
ended with the graphic like he never found his way
Oh
home or
boy.
like that. It's
Yeah.
just that was the end of it, like the
I mean, that's
darkest
how
of
they should
dark
have ended
endings.
Galactica, honestly. That would have been hilarious.
Oh
Yeah.
my god. So
Like,
yeah.
yeah. But
Um,
yeah, so we have
they're gonna do whatever, right? They're gonna do a Chadwick Boseman, except they're gonna do it like unceremoniously.
well, I mean, even with Chadwick Boseman, I mean, I think they said they're gonna start with the funeral. Are they gonna do a funeral? I don't think so. It's hard, right? This is why one of those things where it's like, do we pay homage? But if we pay homage, does that mean that, is it too mean to do it in a movie? Are we like stopping the entire movie because we're doing homage? So it's one of those things where maybe they'll do
when
the
did it
funeral of T'Challa, but maybe they won't,
I mean, you could just Cara Dune, you could just never refer to again.
Yeah,
That would be
she'll
fairly
just never. That's why, like, she'll never show up again. They'll never reference her again. And
yeah.
so the
I mean, it was immaterial. Like it is, she was, removable from the story now. Like, he
she
took,
was a
Luke took, she was there, right? But
yeah,
whatever, that's it. You flash forward to 6 months later, and
right.
that's it. And you invent some story. Oh, Cara, oh yeah, she died in that firefight or whatever.
I mean, they probably won't even. Yeah, but then the joke aside,
Maybe,
they probably won't even mention her because they just don't want that, in there. But that's what I was thinking about: is how does the Mandalorian? So the child is out of the story. Luke Skywalker has taken the child away. Mando is on his own. Um, there is a whole you have at least, let's say you have 5 to 6 episodes to fill with the actual Mandalore planet and Bo-Katan arc, where the Mando and Bo-Katan have to fight for supremacy of the Darksaber, which may or may not include Bo-Katan having to kill. This is the Spock and Kirk. They will kill us, Captain. So it's one of those kind of things where, does this result in Mando killing Bo-Katan, or does Bo-Katan kill Mando? Do they achieve an impasse and sort of create a new Mandalore? But then where does it go from there? I mean, it's one of those things. I think one of the ways they could continue the point of Cara Dune being in Mandalorian was to provide a secondary character who was just as interesting and provided a good backstory to some of the storylines that they were doing. So I feel like they still need characters who don't wear helmets all the time to act alongside of
Oh,
Mando.
he's no, he's not gonna have his helmet on, and
Oh, you
like,
don't think so? Okay.
no,
Okay.
no, no.
Yeah.
They were
That's
sowing
the
the seed.
other.
They were sowing the seeds for that already.
Yeah.
Like where and you know what? And I will say, in an interesting way, the one thing I wish they hadn't done is I wish they hadn't had him take his helmet off in the episode with Bill Burr. Like I think
Yeah.
what I think he should have done in that episode was like show that he was going to, and then something like got in the way. I think it would have been smarter to show that he was like developing like the ability to do it if needed without actually doing it, and then have him do it at the end. I don't know if it would have worked. It worked well in that episode with Bill Burr,
Yeah.
who by the way could just be given a bigger role.
That's what I was gonna say. Is Bill Burr, let's say, hey, it's one of those things. This is how showrunners think about these things, right? I mean, again, we're not saying that these are the best showrunners in the world, but they're decent showrunners. You're mapping out the story for the next season.
Yeah,
You
I mean,
go, who
I
can
think
we bring
Filoni
back?
and Favreau are, probably like the best people to be handling Star Wars right now. Like they're
Absolutely.
Feige, they're the Star Wars Feige.
We've gotten two great seasons, not great, let's just say really good seasons of the Mandalorian out of them. And so as they're mapping this out, they go, well, okay, we need somebody to come back just to be like a cool, hey, remember, that whole thing. So they bring back Bill Burr. Bill Burr sort of becomes, maybe like one or two more episodes becomes a thing. Just two episodes, just enough sprinkled in there to give us a taste of like some cool, adventures that they're having. And then we go on with the main story, whatever that may be, because we don't know. The child no longer has to be returned. The child has been returned.
Well,
So
so here's your big problems. One, are people will people be as invested in a Grogu-less plot?
right.
Because the thing about the Mandalorian to me that's very special is nobody wanted it.
Yeah.
Mandalorian was the thing that nobody knew that they wanted in their lives, which in a way I think is why it succeeded. It was the one Star Wars thing like in so long that people were just like, what is this random thing that is barely within like the sphere of interest in Star Wars? He's a Mandalorian, and there was all this like speculation that no, he's actually going to be Boba Fett, and they're not telling us. Like that's how strong the belief was that they never stray from that crap. And and that's a big problem that I have with them. And I think they continuously make the universe smaller. I think this is a rare example of them making the universe bigger,
Yeah.
but also then, but here's the biggest problem, because problem A is like, are people invested in a plot that doesn't have Grogu? Because it's not that it's not that people went into this show knowing who like Mando was, and so the falling in love with the show is, you can't separate it with people like falling in love with that, like that dynamic, that character, like the Grogu character, and like the dynamic between them becomes inseparable from why people love the show, as inseparable as Mando himself potentially. And so you might be taking out something that like makes people very invested in it, but that ties into the biggest problem of all. Like, what happens later. What happens later in this world, right? And so,
Yeah. Well, people have been speculating that Filoni and Favreau are just gonna, hey, guess what? That never happened.
yes,
MCU style.
because quite literally, like unless no, not like again, because I don't buy the Zack Snyder explanation of like, or the cat. You know what? I won't blame Zack Snyder. The idea that Fury didn't summon Captain Marvel during the first Chitauri invasion is absurd.
Yeah.
Is absurd.
Yeah.
There is that, like, are you kidding me? Like, it just, and then like it rocked his world to the point where like he was gonna give Hydra, the ability to like take over Earth essentially. Like, and so like I don't buy the idea that yes, Grogu's out there somewhere during the sequels and didn't do
Hidden
anything.
somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Which means that we all know what happened to him. He was murdered by Kylo Ren. Like
Right,
that,
right.
right? And so
Yeah.
like that's so
Or
that's
it's
it.
what's the line from Rogue One? Oh, it's Grogu back from the dead. It's like right after everybody like Palpatine's dead, raised, everybody.
They're gonna dub the Greedo.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or like, Ray,
But
like right
Grogu.
after I'm Ray Skywalker, and then she hears a noise and turns around and there's Grogu and just like, yes, back from the dead I am. And you're like, what the
Yes.
hell?
I was gonna say, yeah, no, it's like yes, meet Grogu's father, McClunky.
Oh my God. McClunky.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was all he was
It's like,
also he was also he was also working for Jabba.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Or
He was
or yeah,
he
like
was calling him over from the adjacent table.
yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
McClunky, come,
Yeah. Just
come
like,
over, come
yeah.
over and help me shoot Han Solo.
Yeah, or just like, yeah, like, hey, Ray, here I am. You probably never heard of me. I'm very connected to your entire life
Yes,
story. Like, what? Who are you? What the hell
it's
is
all in
this?
weird ADR.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
like again, that's why that's and by making the world smaller, it also means that your story is bookended at this point, right? Essentially, you got your like Phantom Menace, and then you got your Bray Skywalker, and you keep trying to plug stuff inside this. You keep trying to stuff this package fuller and fuller of detail, which is fine, I guess. Like, you want to flesh out, but like you're getting in your own way. It's really difficult.
yeah. I mean, I like the idea that this is a Western, and so it's like knowing that, this is like, imagine if like this is 1865 and then you have until 1890s, you have 30 years until the West is actually conquered, so you can do the Indian raids, you can do all these different things as long as you don't mess with the actual, end of the West, so to speak. And so you can play around in that sandbox, but then you have to keep events to a low end, which means Luke Skywalker can't be showing up every 5 minutes, and also you can't be the Empire's, the Empire's gone, but then somewhere out there in the next 20, 30 years is the beginning of the First Order, but you don't reach that point. You just keep playing in the, so basically the Mando keeps doing these, tiny jobs, and you give enough stakes to Mando where you go, well, we're invested in him, so we're not going to care about what's happening in the wider empire. You bring that in once or twice, that kind of a thing. Where it's
Yeah.
like, again, it's small jobs.
But you hobbled yourself essentially by making the object of everybody's like squee and glee and whatever a fucking Yoda.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
You
mean,
got to live with that choice. But you know what? Look, eventually one of these franchises, and I do think maybe Marvel, because I typically have the most faith in Marvel these days, will have the balls to reboot their universe. It
yeah,
happens in other media all the time.
yeah. I
Books.
mean,
How many like Star Wars EU novels where they were like, we're gonna reboot, we're gonna because officially, initially there was like a canon sequel to sequel books to Return of the Jedi, but then they were like, no, we're gonna do a different
yeah,
set of sequels to Return of the Jedi. Like video games do this, shows, comic books are rife with that stuff.
yeah.
Even Marvel specifically routinely reboots their entire universe, and so does DC. The New 52 was just like a giant, just universe reboot
Yeah.
with like all
Let's
new, things and all new whatever.
I
And
was
why
gonna
not?
say, yeah, let's imagine the downturn economic wise of the film business lasts until 2030. So 2028 would be the 20th anniversary of the first Iron Man, which, holy crap, we're old.
Wow,
But
that is pretty
so let's
amazing.
let's say they bring back Downey Jr. for two more things that are like, Galactus or something, right? Like that's the next sort of thing where Downey Jr. or the new, we have multiverse. So Tony Stark comes back in the multiverse format, and so then he's like, he meets like, Pepper Potts from this universe, and there's a whole, we get all the emotional like, oh my God, you're Tony, but you're not my Tony, and that,
Uh-huh.
we get all those kinds of emotional things, and you set up Galactus, and then you basically end it there, 2028, 2030, whatever. Give it 8 more years, 2038. 10, 8 to 10 more years, then you reboot the whole thing with a whole new cast and a whole new, crew.
Yeah, or I mean, or you just like again, you could do it. You really could say like, tease it out like 2 years in advance and say like, here's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We got all new Avengers,
Yeah.
right? We cast X as Captain America and X as Iron Man or whatever, and then maybe you don't have to necessarily like do a ramp up like you did before because now everybody knows those characters, and you could literally kind of start with like an Avengers movie, and then break out into the individuals. Like you could do other stuff. Like you could totally take other takes on it. You could have them significantly depowered. You could have them in a totally different era.
Yeah.
You could have them
Do a
in the
lot of old man
future.
Logan stuff.
Yeah, you could do all kinds of crap. And by the way, I think that DC is kind of starting to lean into this. They were going to have like two different Batmans like running concurrently. I
Yeah.
thought the thing I liked about Joker, in the same way that like I liked about Logan, was it was just like just do a story.
Yeah.
Do a thing. Like who care? Like who care? What are you gonna confuse audiences? Make an interesting idea. Like it sucks because you're actually again you're sabotaging yourself. The studio prevents itself from making all these like interesting one-offs because they're like, no, we're in the middle of a 15-year arc. It's like, who cares that you're in the middle of a 15-year arc?
Yeah. Well, this also reminds me in some ways going back to like the idea of what movies are. This is it's kind of what reminds me of when silent movies were happening. One of the biggest blockbusters at the time was a biblical movie called Ben-Hur. And then when talkies happened, maybe 30 years later, so the first Ben-Hur is like 1917, 1920s. Cecil B. DeMille directed it. Or I think maybe William Wyler produced it at the time. It was one of those just, giant blockbusters,
Yes.
brought people out. And then, so 1959, so that would be about 30 years later around that time. Yeah, 30-ish years later, we get the William Wyler 70 millimeter Ben-Hur, and that like blew people away. It won all the Oscars, and that was like the big thing. And then you also have various sort of stock characters that every actor and their mother has played. So Moff Tarkin, I'm blanking on the actor's name, did Dracula, did Sherlock Holmes, played a bunch of different characters. Vincent Price played Sherlock Holmes, Christopher Lee played Sherlock Holmes. And so we're sort of entering that new era of the movie studio pulps, in the sense of like, hey, these are stock characters, and eventually people are just gonna have to start realizing that anybody can play them, and we're just gonna start monetizing this in whatever ways we can every couple of years or every decade, kind of a thing, and see how long we can last with it. And then eventually you'll get to the era.
I think they're called iconic characters, like
Yeah.
James Bond.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, meaning like you can watch any James Bond movie at any time, and he could be played by anyone, and it doesn't really matter at all.
Yeah.
Like Robin Hood is a great example of like as somebody that like a million different
People have,
play.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, at some point that'll go out of fashion, and I mean, these are always sort of in terms of thinking about storytelling and how storytelling evolves. I mean, this even goes back to Geoffrey Chaucer writing about writing versions of the Iliad that have language from the knightly era of his time, very anachronistic. So I'm sure we'll get to that point where these become just part and parcel of the universal culture. American culture or global culture. I mean, everybody around the world loves these characters, so it's going to be interesting to see where they go. I mean, we're introducing Kumail Nanjiani is playing a superhero, so who knows where this goes, right? I mean, who knows where this ends up being? But it's kind of an interesting era to be part of, because we've never really seen TV and movies and comics come together so close like this, where really it is like nerd central, in the sense of like stuff that we used to love has now become so expensive, or I guess money making, that we can just keep doing this forever.
I do like the fact that we have this like a Marvel three phase like full cycle that just exists now, and you can just watch it start to finish and just have like it's like the Harry Potter series,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That now just exists, and like you can either watch those like Fantastic Beasts movie or not. They're now thinking of rebooting Harry Potter for TV.
Oh God, this is gonna be so boring.
And now look, now here's the thing. Here's the thing. It lends itself really well to TV because there's a ton of stuff that they cut,
Yeah.
especially from the latter books. Like once you get to Goblet of Fire, the books just become too long. I mean, they're all like,
I mean, are they gonna
1,000-page
do?
tomes. But the problem now will be, again, how iconic all of those castings were.
Yeah.
And
Well,
whether
I
or
was
not.
wondering. I was
Mhm.
wondering, are they going to do like the lower decks kind of a thing where you see events happening from other characters, or are they just going to like, oh no, this is just Hogwarts and different era, or
I don't
you
know. I
know,
mean, I like I said, I would love, if they were gonna do that, if they were gonna do it for TV, I would love for them to just go full on like a highly detailed adaptation. Like go faithful.
just go faithful? Okay, yeah,
Yeah. And again, the problem is the castings are so iconic that you really run the risk of like looking like a fan film, right?
yeah,
If you don't, like
extended.
just because it's like, or like a school play where everybody's like different.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
really needs to be.
there's already that play, the Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which is kind of like a fanfic version of like, I don't know exactly how it happened, but I think it was a thing for charity or whatever it was, where they asked J.K. Rowling to contribute a story, and then a bunch of other people took that story and expanded on the dialogue and everything. It's honestly, as a 50% fan of Harry Potter, and that I like a lot of things, but I don't like a lot of other things. I thought The Cursed Child was just like, okay, this is just going to be an awful, like horrible version of Harry Potter that
Yeah,
we're
well,
going to
and I
get.
didn't, and I thought, I mean, I don't like those Fantastic Beasts movies at all. Uh,
Yeah. Not
I
too much to add there. Yeah.
No, I will also, I mean, I also thought like I have many different problems with it, but like one of my biggest problems was that like the sort of the British magic lore that she created is very rich and it has a lot of character, and her like there is zero effort put into like the American version
Yeah. Yeah.
of magic lore. Like American magic has no character, because well, and look, and in fairness to her, she's not American.
Yeah.
I think she could have put more effort into it than their bureaucrats and their xenophobic, like, was essentially all she had to say about America is
Yeah.
bureaucracy and xenophobia. That was it. Like that was like there was no interesting names or different kinds of magic or things like that where they would feel more American.
It's also just gotten, I mean, I think there was some discussion about, are there Native American wizards, right? And then it's like, well, if we depict them, it's going to get problematic.
Well,
People are going to say,
yeah, well, and also there was because there was like an American Hogwarts, and the names got people offended because they were related again to Native American
okay,
stuff.
that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So it's just
it
like,
yeah.
it's,
Again, no politics, but I
yeah.
will say on a non-political level, like there is a catch-22 between like the sometimes like sincere desire to like put representation in your movie and do stuff like that, and like the fact that it might somehow cross a line that you were not even intending to cross. Like I mean, I guess it's because Black Panther put in so much effort into like the cultural research that their like costume designer did and stuff that nobody thought that it was problematic. They felt that it was like very respectful to the mishmash of like African cultures that it represented. And yeah, I thought that was like I thought that was great
Yeah.
because that's sort of what you want. Like Afrofuturism is a really cool aesthetic, and so yeah, there you have that like problem of like will it become stereotypical and cartoony?
Yeah.
There's
And it's
actually
also like, do you address American racism? Like that's gonna be number one problem. So it's like, okay, if there's a Black Hogwarts, are they, is it connected to the goings on of the day? If it's not, because you just want it to have its own thing, then you go, there's so many
It's
just like
difficult, right?
tripwires that
Right.
you're gonna
It's
cross
difficult
that,
because
yeah.
because you're right. Because on the one hand, like you don't want to like whitewash history. Because yeah, there is like a Holocaust problem with Harry Potter that I don't care about because like I don't spend my time
Yeah.
caring about that kind of stuff. But yes, the idea is like is totally ignoring something like slavery or Jim Crow or whatever, if that's the period that you're covering in your like fantasy story, is ignoring it okay. But also, like, what if you don't want to be really grim about, like, what if you're telling us, like, if the point of your story like is harmed by taking away from it and focusing on something grim like that? So yeah, it's kind of it can be a trap. I don't know, like, again, I whatever,
Th-
like,
this is
it's
and
a problem, but
honestly, as a fan, this is where it gets too much for me, and I have to pull out. So this is why I always almost want to it not to like you should not that you should not care. It's like it should not matter. Like you just go with the story. Who cares? And this is kind of why. And this is
I think intent matters so much. Like, because again, Magneto, his famous origin story involves being at
right,
Auschwitz, right? And some people are offended by this. Like,
right.
some people think that it's exploitative, and they find it offensive. I always thought that it was really brilliant because the core of Magneto's character is, and because X-Men is in itself a big allegory about racism and about xenophobia and the acceptance of the other or whatever. And it's so central to Magneto's character that he experienced the Holocaust, that I think that it's used because how like in Game of Thrones, there was the idea that like Sansa's rape was exploitative and gratuitous and whatever. And I think it's on some level, when you use that, because we as society understand like what a horrible act and what a violation that is, like using that as your as your synecdoche or whatever it is for that, it enforces our societal like disgust with the act, so that, and yes, I totally get why it bothers some people to watch it. I get it, but I do think that you like totally ignoring the fact that the reason you're even doing that is to like enforce the disgust of it, is maybe misplaced. And so yeah, like in that same way, right?
But this is kind of why I feel like this is why in a way this is why Game of Thrones is more popular, and you could do a masterclass on it because in my opinion Game of Thrones ripped off HBO's Rome. They ripped off actors, they ripped off storylines, they ripped off the violence of it, the whole feel and gist of it. And I'm not the first person to say that again, but it's one of those things where Rome wouldn't HBO's Rome or any other similar project set in real world or had connections to the real world would not have survived for 7 seasons because and Rome did not survive for 7 seasons, survived for 2 seasons because with Game of Thrones, because it had dragons, it had this kind of fantasy setting, people could enjoy it without feeling like they're being forced into a political discussion or forced into like any kind of, it's like, oh, this is a story, crazy stuff's happening in it, I can be really really into it and not have that discussion that goes into politics, that goes into other things. And I feel like this is why, and this is partly a problem with Rowling herself, because she gets involved in political discussions, that her property then becomes the proxy, it's the child of divorce kind of a thing, where you have this magical world. You could do magicians in India. You could do magicians in America. You could do magicians all over the world. You could literally do what's the cup in Harry Potter? Like you could do the 1970 cup where nobody, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
has no Voldemort's no long, all of that, just like completely, ignore it, and you just have wonderful characters. They're doing the Yule Ball, the Goblet of Fire cup, all of those things are happening. And you're like, oh, this is like a great story. It's like a bunch of friends who went to school. Snape's not there. None of those characters are there. These are completely new thing. But that will always, the political side of things will always inform, even when you're trying to just create a good story. And I think that's the problem. And that's why maybe you have shows like that are in some level insane, but allow the audience to not feel like they're getting involved into a political side of things or getting involved into something that's going to become problematic later on. And I feel like Harry Potter's that well has been poisoned to a certain extent. But you have like the Mandalorian, you have other shows coming out where you can just be like, oh, this is like a fun little thing, and then I can turn my brain off for a while.
Yeah, I think it also depends on how the show chooses to address certain things. Because, if if the Mistborn novels ever get adapted into a show, they have a lot of narratives, things like about environmentalism and about class struggle and slavery and things like that. That you could address, in ways that would, again, that would like trigger hot takes and political debates, and in ways that would just like resonate on a very abstract level, right? Because like the Prince of Egypt is about slavery, right? Is literally about slavery, not about American slavery,
Right.
but it is about life as slaves. But like, and you could, conceivably, you could have made the dialogue in that movie like heavily hinty at like current events,
Weighted to the
because
current events, yeah.
because it was like it was a musical, right? It was
What
not
and like songs from, the Black experience, in terms of gospel songs include, stories about Moses,
yeah,
Yeah.
wade in the water, all kinds of like
Yeah.
a lot of those like gospels and are like that is a big theme, like the idea of like leaving from
Of
slavery or
liberation, yeah,
whatever.
of
Yeah,
being set
but
free
I
from,
think,
yeah.
and I do think, because there is this whole discussion about like everything is political, right? Saying apolitical is in itself political. And so yeah, I think that there are ways that are creatively smart, and you can do it without it getting dragged into, what, I'll put it this way: you can be political without being partisan, or I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but like you can have a worldly messages without being political. I
Yeah.
think you need like a different, right? You can have something to say about society and the world without sounding like you're making like a specifically a political point,
Yeah,
right?
I think a good example is looking at how Marvel, or not Marvel, Sony did Miles Morales. Like, you look at Miles Morales and you look at, the Spider-Verse movie. That is a great example of, there's some politics there, but it's not politics in the sense of like, oh my God, what an awful scene, that this scene about the oppressor or the narrative of this or that. It's just like, no, it's just out and out. He's Black Spider-Man. Here it is. Here's a story, and at the end he becomes Spider-Man. He
Yeah.
is Spider-Man. Like, that's, there's something to be enjoyed. You could not have enjoyed Miles Morales in the 90s. Maybe you could have, but I'm saying that moment was perfect for Miles Morales, where you would be like, hell yeah, man, fucking A, this is awesome.
Yeah.
This guy's the perfect handoff to a Black Spider-Man without feeling like you ruined Spider-Man. So there was, the politics of it did not inform the story, but it's political to a certain extent, where you can feel
There's
like, okay, this is cool.
It's representation. I think I said on
Yes.
one of my old podcasts, I think it was like about, I might have been talking about Black Panther or about like Civil War or something like that. I said, like, instead of like in your brain, like, you replace the word diversity with the word variety,
Yeah.
and like just think of it like that. Think about like, hey, wouldn't it be original to have a Spider-Man who isn't a white guy? Because that's all, the thing that we had all, like, what kind of interesting story ideas could that produce? Like that's the idea. By the way, in the same way that you do like a Gotham by Gaslight, like in the same way that you say, like, what if Batman lived in the 19th century?
Yeah.
You can say, like, what if Batman was Hispanic? I don't know.
Right.
Like, what what kind of changes might that have made in his life? I don't know if his father was like a Mexican mogul or something like that.
Well,
Whatever.
there
Like,
there
that's,
was a really, really horribly done attempt to create an Indian Spider-Man, and oh my God, I mean, it was cringe as hell. And that's the thing, is like, we got political without getting political, but I don't, I don't lay awake at night as a brown man wondering why aren't there more brown superheroes. Like, if Immortals with Kamal Nanjiani comes out and it's a great movie, like, hey, this is cool. But even to like see the Indian character in Deadpool, I didn't go, oh my God, of course he's a taxi driver. I'm like, oh, that's pretty goddamn funny, like the way they did it, because he goes about how he like killed his wife's or the girl that he loved, like he's got him in a trunk, and
yeah.
I was like, this is goddamn funny. Like, this is awesome that this Indian guy's in there and he's getting a chance to like be a side character. But that wasn't like, oh my God, why isn't he the main character? There's none of that. I think you should be able to enjoy content. You should be able to be a fan of content. And again, we were just talking about the Prince of Egypt, where you can enjoy stuff that isn't related but has relation. You can relate to it without having the characters reflect who you are directly, because that's not what you go to a story or a piece of action or music or whatever it is. That's not what you're there for. You're there to you like it, hopefully, because it raises up some feelings inside of you that have no relation to what it actually the content is by itself. It's how you're relating to it because maybe you felt that way, or maybe you have some emotions that are being reflected on the screen or in a story in general. So that's why I just, yeah, this whole like way of how fandom has become unenjoyable is just the worst thing ever, especially during the COVID era where you're just like, oh my God, I need something to have fun, but you kind of feel like you can't. So it's like, I want things to go back just to being a fan. You just be a fan of something, enjoy it. If you don't like it, don't have to talk about it. We're not talking about stuff we don't enjoy. And hopefully that's how it continues.
Unless we do it, unless we're,
We mock it to like have it, have it
Yeah.
be fun. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
Exactly.
speaking of stuff we enjoy, moving on to the next topic. Any books that you're reading right now?
I'm currently I listen to a lot of audiobooks these days because
Yeah, me too.
I feel like I don't have time to read. I'm going through. I'm listening to books that I have read, and I'm currently going through Peter F. Hamilton's Nightstone trilogy, which is I don't want to, like, the problem is you can't really describe the premise without kind of spoiling like a really big fun like reveal that happens like, I don't know, 600 pages into the first book. It takes its sweet time like setting up the big reveal, but I'll describe it this way. It's like a really hard, well set up like sci-fi universe, and then he throws a completely reality breaking twist into it. That's essentially what he does. The first book is called The Reality Dysfunction. Like, that's the name of the first book in the trilogy. And so it's not a spoiler to say that he introduces a totally reality breaking element into like a story that up until that moment is very properly science fiction-y composed and has like very, like goes into the details of how like the economy of a colonization of a planet and stuff like that, and then just goes full on like insane cuckoo, and it's really fun. It
Yeah,
is extremely
I need
fun.
to catch up on my Peter F. Hamilton, but when it goes into like yeah, I don't know, at some point where it goes way too much into hard SF, I kind of
So
tune
it
out a
doesn't
little bit.
so it doesn't go into it doesn't go into boring, but it does throw you off in terms of like what kind of book it's going to be by being like, like one of the main plot lines it follows initially is a bunch of like families that arrive on a planet that's being colonized. It's in the early stages of being colonized, and so it's almost like they're almost like frontiersmen. Like, they take them down river on a riverboat to their new like home, their area where they build their own homesteads and start farming, and then like, hopefully like 200 years down the line, like that guy's like grandchildren will be rich on that planet or something like that, right? But it explains in pretty interesting detail like how that stuff works. Like, they set up the world, and like there's a development company, and like, they have these like planning stages, and 50 years later they transition to like planetary economy, and then 100 years later they gain this kind of autonomy from the development company or whatever. So yeah, like it sets up the fact that it's gonna be kind of detailed and sort of well planned, but then it goes like, Hyperion, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Hyperion. That's like a high opera fantasy craziness, right? It kind of goes, it kind of introduces an element a little like that into a harder sci-fi universe, which I really
Gotcha.
like. What
Well,
about you?
speaking of sci-fi, I'm enjoying there's a sci-fi writer by the name of David Gerrold. He wrote for Star Trek. He wrote the original Star Trek. He wrote a bunch of episodes for that one. So he has a really interesting, it's almost like it's not like Starship Troopers, it's more like the Zerg before the Zerg if you're into StarCraft.
Mhm.
He wrote a series of books called The War Against Tor, and the Tor is spelled Chtorr, and it's basically about how this alien ecology takes over Earth. And what it does, it's like it's very detailed in terms of, like, because he has to describe, like, plants that are acting in unison, or acting in a biome sense with the evil worms and things that will eat your flesh alive and stuff like that. And
Oh.
how, so this, like, sort of alien ecology starts in Texas, like the invasion. So it's an alien invasion, but it's really not an alien invasion. It's
It's kind
more
of like
like
that movie Monsters, the Gareth Edwards movie Monsters, right?
kind of like that. It's an alien invasion. The way he explains it, it's like, it's almost like, imagine if the colonials didn't arrive on Plymouth Rock, but syphilis, gonorrhea, like all the no, not well, no, syphilis was given to us by the New World, but like all the other things that they were supposed to bring, like horses and warfare and all these, like, ecological differences and changes happen. So it's basically the alien invasion before the alien invasion. So it's the aliens haven't arrived yet. They've just thrown in
They
all of their
just
plants.
seeded, yeah, they
Yeah.
seeded their, oh, interesting.
So
So
that's
they're basically like they're xenoforming.
xenoforming. Yeah, exactly.
Is that the term? I
Yeah, I
think that's
guess.
the
Yeah, I
term.
think I think that is the term. Yeah. And
It's
so
the
it's
reverse of like to terraform something, right?
yeah, and what's fascinating about it is, one, because of all, so it's really, people with like flamethrowers, and
Sure.
the science division has to be called in. It's very, very sci-fi, but it's very, very decent. And David Gerrold also has a new book out called, I forget the exact name of it, but he's unique, maybe not unique, but he's a lot of his characters tend to be like gender neutral or gender binary, or
Mhm.
they sometimes also shift genders. He's always had that in his books since the beginning. So it's also interesting from that sense, because the main character sort of goes through a number of changes in terms of gender, and
Yeah,
has mates and lovers.
Hamilton's Salvation trilogy, which just the third one just recently came out, has a, like, in the future, has this whole thing where future humans go through, they're all like, they go through phases of both genders, like they change genders in like cycles, so they have like male cycles and female cycles. um yeah, like I find that stuff really interesting, actually. Like that's that again. We're gonna go back to not being political again, but yeah, again, the idea of introducing interesting things like that into your story in a way that just feels like, I've never really read anything like this before. Like Tad Williams in his series Otherland, like the characters in it are like, you would are totally out of left field. There's like a bushman and a child with progeria, and it's just like, I've just never really experienced anything like this, and it doesn't feel like I'm gonna make my book diverse. It just feels like this is really, and there's extremely good plot story reasons for him to have picked people in the positions that he did. Like, it's all, and I believe he's like woke in some way or whatever, but I'm not sure. Like, it feels like maybe he is like in retro thinking about the story in retrospect. But yeah, at no point do you feel like, oh, of course
You're
he's
being
gonna
preached to.
no. Nobody in this book is a white. What's his name? Alistair Reynolds has a series. The first book on it is called Blue Remembered Earth, in which like African nations become like the dominant economic powers on Earth, and they're the ones in the future who are like, have the space elevators and are the whatever. There was like a total shift. And first of all, that is entirely plausible if you look back, that 500 or 600 years at like what were the economic powers back then and what they are now, and how some kind of ecological disaster might make like Africa more temperate, where it makes our climate like really, really extreme, and then
Yeah.
just like game that out 400 years or something like that. And yeah, you could have like the Congo be like the rich, like the most advanced, richest nation on earth. And so that's really interesting. Like, that's a great idea to explore as far as I'm concerned. Like, and so, yeah, I don't know. I feel like maybe book nerds have less of an issue with that stuff, just because a lot of authors like think about these ideas in ways that are again non-political. They have something to
Yeah.
say about like society and gender, but it doesn't feel like politics.
Yeah.
It just feels like, because you could talk about like the philosophy, of gender, or the philosophy of society is can be very separate from, talk about what kind of political implications it has.
As long as the story's good, that's what should matter. And nobody's here to like, say, "Oh my God, I'm so triggered by this or that." It's like, again, it should go both ways. It's you should be able to enjoy people who aren't in your ideological sort of sense, reflect who you are inside or the outside, and you should also be able to enjoy, things that both spectrums in terms of like left or right. You should be able to enjoy people from the right. You should be able to enjoy people from the left. They all have something to say about it, and that's what should matter. And it's sad that we're here, but hopefully myself and you, we can at least enjoy or show people stuff that we can enjoy that has no sort of overt political stuff into it. It's just a goddamn good story, something you can just have a good time with.
Yeah, and like freely. I mean, like on my old podcast, I used to say like the only time I'm going to be political on that podcast was when I was going to say something that people didn't expect, like when I was going to take a position that would like maybe surprise people. And so yeah, I would say stuff that was like pro diversity and whatever, because yeah, often I will, like I said, I'll encounter a story that has elements like that, and will be like Adrian Tchaikovsky's Children of Time is about the gender revolution of an alien species, essentially. But it's reversed. It's a species in which like the males are like the lesser whatever. It's Portia spiders. Like it's actually like an Earth species that becomes super intelligent because of whatever, because of plot, right? But like it describes how, and in that species, like the females are the larger and more dominant in Portia spiders, and so like in his book, it's the males that need to like undergo like a class revolution, like a gender class revolution, and it's really interesting. Like it's a cool setting, and it does say stuff about gender and society that's interesting to read. And so yeah, like that's great. I loved it. It's a great book.
Yeah, hopefully we can talk more about. We'll do a whole thing about books that we love, or I don't know, like a book review would
By
be a cool.
topic, we could do all kinds of crap, like talk
Yeah,
about, yeah, like I that's a great idea. Like, hey, think of a book that does X, and we can talk about it next week or something like that. Yeah, like
absolutely.
so this was like a kind of a test run
Yeah,
of a thing that's gonna probably be like timed and like sorted out into topics and stuff. But yeah, just basically like talking about fun things that are fun.
yeah, fun things that are fun that we can use to enjoy ourselves with, and yeah, as I said, it doesn't have to be super laid out, but we can totally do like let's talk about this book that we both love, like
Yeah.
Dune's coming out, so we can just do an episode on Dune,
Sure, because we're
kind
gonna
of a
get
thing.
to there's gonna be because Falcon and Winter Soldier is coming up, and
Yeah,
so I recently watched a Winter Soldier, and I want to watch Civil War because like Zemo is gonna be in it,
right, right,
um,
right.
and yeah, so I've become obsessed with watching the earlier Marvel movies and picking out moments that are like snowball moments,
Yeah,
small moments that have like ripple effects, and one of the big ones is how Falcon becomes an Avenger, which is he just says something about beds. Like Rogers is like walking away, and he says something like, "Your bed's too soft," right? And he's like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, when I was in Afghanistan or whatever, I used to sleep on the ground, and when I came back, my bed was too soft or whatever." And that's it. That's the
yeah,
thing that makes them friends or whatever. And then he becomes an Avenger.
yeah, yeah.
Like that's
It's
I
it's
love those.
yeah, it's those little things that really matter. And that's, again, this is like full credit to Kevin Feige for like shepherding characters through and letting multiple creators do multiple different things that fit together, not really well, but like good enough where you go, I buy it. This is great,
Yeah, it takes a while. It just takes a while to get going. And,
Yeah.
even when I actually think now that in retrospect, a lot of the lesser movies feel better to me in the context of everything, especially like the Thor: The Dark World is a good example of this, which ironically, by the way, was written by the same people who wrote Infinity War and Endgame. So like they made their own movie more important.
Yeah, yeah,
They made their movie that everybody hated like really important in like the canon.
yeah.
But yeah, like like Iron Man 2, I don't know, like movies like that just feel, because I'm watching them going like, because I'm, this is gonna be interesting because I know where this goes 15 movies down the line.
Cool.
So yeah, there's gonna be stuff to talk about.
Awesome, man. Well, this was a great first episode, or
Yeah.
episode 00. And then yeah, we'll try to do this maybe once a week. And if not, then whatever, but we'll figure it out. And hopefully we can always bring something interesting to talk about that is not related to the awfulness of the current world. And you just tune out for a couple hours, listen to this on a podcast, listen to this on YouTube, whatever you want, and enjoy yourself. So this was awesome, man. All right. Peace. Talk to you later. Bye.